I knew my wife wanted me dead the moment I saw the photo. Not because of the way she looked, smiling, relaxed, but because of what was behind our daughter. A hand-drawn sign, half covered in scribbles, with one word still visible: help. My name is Jason Garrett. I spent 14 years in Army Special Forces, surviving things most people only see in classified reports. I've walked through IED fields, disarmed hostiles with my bare hands, and buried friends in countries I can't pronounce. But that photo? That broke me in a way combat never did. Emma, my 6-year-old daughter, wasn't the type to draw for fun. She was direct, like me. That word on her sign wasn't random. It was a signal. And my wife, Ashley? She either hadn't noticed or didn't care. I was supposed to be gone for another month, deployed somewhere eastern enough that time zones blurred. I told Ashley it was one last mission, a short stint to secure our financial future before I took a desk job training recruits. She smiled, kissed me goodbye, and said she'd hold the fort. She forgot I was trained to read between lines and track threats before they knew they were being hunted. I pulled strings. A favor here, a name drop there. Within 24 hours, I was on a classified emergency return flight. No questions asked. Family crisis, I told command. They didn't press. My record bought me that much. What they didn't know was that the crisis wasn't just domestic. It was strategic. When I landed, I didn't go home. Instead, I checked into a cheap motel 40 minutes out and called the only person I trusted, my sister, Lauren. Former cybercrime analyst, now a PI. The kind of person who'd tell me the truth without sugarcoating it. I sent her the photo. She didn't hesitate. I'll start digging, she said. You need to know what you're walking into. While she pulled threads, I went dark, no calls, no texts. I needed to watch them from the shadows, just like I used to overseas. Only this time, the battlefield was my own backyard. Lauren's first update came 2 days later. Ashley had a pattern. Work late 3 times a week, always on the same nights. A babysitter watched Emma. The car Ashley left in wasn't always hers. One night, it was a red coupe registered to a Royce Bennett. No husband, no kids. Pharmaceutical rep, surface level clean. But something about the guy smelled wrong. He's slick, Lauren told me. But his money doesn't match his job. And he's been seen with other military wives. That was enough for me to start surveillance. The next night, I watched my own house from the neighbor's backyard. Ashley didn't know I'd added a second layer of security before deploying. A system only I could access. Hidden cams. Audio nodes. She never noticed. She never thought I'd question her. At 9:13 p.m., the coupe pulled into the driveway. I watched Royce walk in like he owned the place. My fists clenched, but I didn't move. Not yet. He stayed for 3 hours. I captured everything. The laughter. The wine. The moments they stood too close. But what chilled me was Emma's bedroom door, closed. Lights off. Not a sound. She was alone. And she knew to stay that way. I waited until Royce left. Then I slipped into the backyard, just long enough to reset the cameras and leave a small mark on the window frame. One Ashley would notice, but not understand. Just enough to make her wonder. I wanted her off balance. That night, I slept 3 hours in my truck. The next day, Lauren called with something bigger. She'd hacked into Royce's public business cloud. Nothing illegal, just metadata scraping. What she found was chilling. Ashley's name came up in multiple message threads. Keywords: deployment schedules, life insurance, survivor benefits. She wasn't just cheating. She was planning a life where I didn't come back. And Royce? He was more than a smooth-talking homewrecker. He was leveraging vulnerable military spouses for insider info. Ashley had been feeding him details for months: unit names, rotations, personnel lists. Casual comments from video calls turned into intelligence leaks. I wasn't just betrayed. I was compromised. I thought I'd prepared for war. Turns out the real battle was here. Home. Ashley had made her choice. Now I had to make mine. Not as a husband, not even as a soldier, but as a father who'd burned the whole world down to protect his daughter. I didn't just want revenge. I wanted evidence. In war, emotion gets people killed. At home, it gets fathers like me labeled unstable. So I buried the rage and did what I was trained to do: observe, infiltrate, expose. Over the next 3 days, I built a case. Every time Royce entered my house, I logged it. Every time Ashley lied to someone about her schedule, I noted the discrepancy. I even intercepted voice memos they'd left each other. Most were harmless, plans, fake alibis. But one stood out. Ashley. I checked the policy. If he dies during deployment, the payouts triple. No questions asked. Royce. Then let's hope he's got bad luck. I played that clip on loop until I could hear it in my sleep. It didn't make me angrier. It made me focused. They weren't just cheating. They were calculating. Plotting. The same woman who'd cried when I left for my first tour now joked about collecting my death benefits. I didn't want her arrested. Not yet. I wanted her exposed. I needed access to Ashley's private device. So I baited her. I waited until she left for work and staged a minor break-in. Window cracked. Drawer open. Nothing taken. Just enough to spook her. That night, I watched from across the street as she tore the house apart, Royce hovering nervously behind her. She checked her phone, then left it charging by the kitchen sink. At 2 a.m., I slipped in through the same window. Quiet. No lights. I had 6 minutes before her security system reset. I cloned the phone and was out in 4. Back at the motel, Lauren helped decrypt it. What we found cemented everything. Photos, conversations, documents. Ashley had sent Royce screenshots of my mission details, deployment timelines, and even base access forms. Nothing classified on its own, but enough for someone like Royce to sell to the right bidder. But the most damning thing? A message draft never sent. Once the paperwork's in, I'll be free. He'll never see it coming. Lauren didn't hesitate. You need to report this. I will, I said. After one last play. She didn't like it. Said I was letting it get personal. She was right. But this wasn't about ego. It was about Emma. My daughter had stopped smiling. Lauren noticed it, too. The girl who used to run around singing now sat quietly in corners. Her drawings got darker. Fewer hearts. More cages. I wasn't going to let my daughter grow up believing love looked like secrets and locked doors. I put the final phase in motion. First, I sent Royce an anonymous message from a fake email account. Your girlfriend's husband is alive. And he's watching. Within hours, he panicked. Called Ashley 14 times. She ignored him. That night, their planned getaway fell apart. I watched them argue in the driveway. She looked scared for the first time. Phase 2. I left a flash drive in Ashley's mailbox. No name. Just a single label. You were never careful. On it were the audio clips, screenshots, and messages I'd collected. Nothing violent. Just the truth. Unfiltered. Undeniable. She found it at noon. I know because she left work early and didn't go home. She went to her sister's place. Alone. Royce showed up later, pacing outside the house like a man with no control left. That's when I moved in. I walked into my house, for the first time in months. It felt hollow, like someone had lived here pretending I didn't exist. My photo with Emma had been taken down. Her art replaced with store-bought decorations. But in her room, taped to the wall, was a new drawing. It was me, holding her hand. And behind us, shadows, with big red X's. I didn't cry. I couldn't afford to. I just sat on her bed, breathed deep, and called my CO. I told him everything. By the end of the week, Royce was under federal investigation. Lauren's contacts confirmed that his name had popped up in a previous case involving stolen data from a Marine spouse. Nothing stuck back then. This time it would. Ashley got served with a notice. Not an arrest. A warning. I'd filed for emergency custody of Emma. Attached were documents showing neglect, unauthorized disclosures of military-related information, and exposure to a person under federal review. I wasn't looking to ruin Ashley's life, just to keep her away from our daughter until she remembered what being a mother meant. The night before the court hearing, I left Ashley a voicemail. Calm. Direct. I'm not the man you remember, but I'm still the father she needs. You made your choices. Now live with them. I ended the call and sat beside Emma's bed until she fell asleep. She held my hand the whole time. For the first time in weeks, she didn't flinch when the wind knocked against the window. She knew I was home, and she knew I wasn't leaving again. Some people break when exposed. Others double down. Ashley chose denial. At the emergency custody hearing, she sat across from me with a lawyer who looked like he'd only just read her file. She avoided my eyes the entire time. Her defense was predictable. Stress, isolation, confusion. She wasn't malicious, just overwhelmed. A tired wife, a lonely mother, misunderstood and misled. But the court didn't care about emotional framing. They cared about the files Lauren provided, call logs, location pings, the voice message where Ashley casually discussed options if I didn't come back. They cared about Emma's school counselor's report, emotional withdrawal, sleep disruption, signs of anxiety triggered by male visitors when her mother wasn't home. They cared about the truth. I was granted temporary full custody. Ashley could request supervised visitation after a psych evaluation. When the judge read the ruling, Ashley didn't speak. She just grabbed her bag and walked out of the courtroom like it wasn't real. But it was. It was over. Or so I thought. The day after the hearing, Royce disappeared. Not fled. Disappeared. His car was found parked at a train station 2 towns over. No bags inside. Wallet in the glove box. House untouched. Phone dead. Gone. My first thought. He ran. Maybe caught wind of the investigation. Maybe cut a deal and vanished before the walls closed in. But when Lauren pulled surveillance footage from a street camera near the station, what we saw didn't look like a getaway. Royce wasn't alone. 2 men, unmarked clothes, military posture. He didn't resist. They escorted him out of frame. Quiet. Efficient. Contractors? I asked. Lauren nodded. Or a federal shadow op. Either way, he's off the board. That should have brought relief. It didn't. Because predators like Royce don't work alone. I shifted focus. If Royce was part of a larger network targeting military families for sensitive intel, I needed to know who else was involved and how deep Ashley had gone. I started with her bank records. Quietly. She wasn't careful. Multiple unexplained deposits. Cash withdrawals in exact amounts matching her life insurance premiums. One transfer stood out. $4, 200 sent to a consulting firm in D.C. I'd never heard of. Except it wasn't a firm. It was a shell company. One Royce had linked to another military spouse scandal years ago. She hadn't just handed him my information. She'd sold it. Lauren looped in one of her federal contacts. Discreet. Off the books. He confirmed what we feared. Ashley had been flagged. Not indicted, yet. But she was on a watch list. Royce had passed her name to someone higher up, someone known for laundering stolen data through pharma reps and contract recruiters. What started as adultery had turned into potential treason. I confronted her. Not with shouting. Not with threats. Just presence. She was walking out of her sister's apartment, head down, when she saw me standing by my truck. You don't get to stalk me, she snapped. You sold me, I said. And you involved our daughter. Her jaw tightened. I didn't know what he was doing. You knew enough to hide cash, lie to my face, and plan a future without me. That cracked her. You were never here, Jason, she hissed. Always off saving the world while I was stuck cleaning up the pieces. He made me feel like I mattered. Emma felt like she didn't. I replied. You taught her that men come and go, and the only constant is silence. She looked away. Then, quietly, what are you going to do? I already did it. I turned and left. Because this wasn't about making her hurt. It was about making sure she couldn't hurt again. That week, I gave everything I had to military intelligence. Every document, message, traceable link between Ashley, Royce, and the broader network. They thanked me. Professionally. Formally. I didn't care about gratitude. I wanted results. And I got them. 4 more individuals were arrested across 3 states. All linked to Royce. All with spouses in active military. All feeding data in small, seemingly harmless pieces. Death by 1,000 disclosures. The case was real. Bigger than I expected. And Ashley? She was now part of it. Not a primary suspect, but a willing participant. She would never again be trusted near any classified systems. Her job flagged her within a month. She lost her clearance, then her license. Without Emma, without Royce, without a future. But I didn't celebrate. There's no joy in watching someone destroy themselves. There's just relief they can't take anyone down with them. Emma asked about her mother less and less. When she did, I told her something simple. Mom made choices. Some hurt people. But we don't hate her. We just protect ourselves. She accepted that. Kids understand more than we think. One night, I tucked her in and she whispered, "Are you leaving again?" "No," I said. "I'm already where I need to be." She nodded, closed her eyes, and slept peacefully, for the first time in a long time. I didn't expect to be called to testify. But 3 months after Royce disappeared and the investigation expanded, I was summoned to a federal building under a generic pretext. Clarification of background and context. Translation. They had enough to move forward, but they wanted my account to reinforce the story. To prove intent. Pattern. Damage. I gave them what they needed. Calm. Factual. Precise. How Ashley asked strange questions before deployments. How she stopped video calls when Emma entered the room. How Royce always knew just enough to stay one step ahead of my schedule. I didn't dramatize. I didn't speculate. I just gave them the truth. The agent across from me nodded more than he spoke. Then he said something I hadn't expected. You handled this with restraint. That wasn't a compliment. It was a warning. They knew what men like me were trained to do, and what they sometimes did when the line between professional and personal broke. I just nodded. My daughter's watching. That was the only reason I hadn't burned everything down. A month later, the indictments dropped. Royce was officially charged with conspiracy to traffic military intelligence, fraud, and unauthorized data transfers under the Espionage Act. He'd been in custody the whole time, held off the books during the internal investigation. He pleaded guilty. No trial. No deal. 25 years. No parole. Ashley wasn't charged federally. She was named as a cooperating civilian, used, manipulated, and discarded. But that didn't mean she walked free. At the state level, she faced charges related to fraud, neglect, and endangerment. The evidence we'd collected was enough to revoke her custody rights indefinitely and suspend her professional licenses. She took a plea deal. 15 years probation. Permanent loss of parental custody. Supervised visitation, if Emma ever wanted it. So far, she hadn't asked. One day, I received a letter. From Ashley. No return address. No request to respond. Just 2 pages, handwritten. Apologies. Explanations. Some real, some self-serving. She said she'd been broken. Confused. Trapped in a life she didn't choose. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She said I'd earned the right to hate her. I read it once. Then I filed it away. Not out of spite, but because closure doesn't always come through confrontation. Sometimes, silence is the cleanest line between before and after. I declined the promotion. Military intelligence offered me a permanent role, a bigger title, and more responsibility. Said I had the instincts for domestic threat analysis. They weren't wrong, but I'd already spent too many years protecting people I'd never meet while losing the ones I loved most. I accepted a position training recruits instead. Teaching, mentoring, preparing others to do the job I no longer wanted. I told Emma, I'm not going far anymore. She just said, good. The last time Lauren and I spoke about the case, she asked if I regretted anything. Plenty, I said, but not how it ended. She raised an eyebrow. Not even letting her off that easy? I shook my head, because I understood now. Punishment isn't always a prison. Sometimes, it's waking up every day knowing what you've lost, and that you earned it. Ashley would live with that longer than any sentence. Emma healed in pieces. She still asked tough questions. Still had moments where she hesitated before trusting fully. But she laughed again. She ran. She created. I watched her draw pictures with all 3 of us. Her, me, and Lauren, on mountains, in parks, riding bikes. Her mother never appeared in those sketches. One night, she asked if bad people could become good again. Some, I said, but only if they want to. She paused. Does mommy want to? I didn't answer. She didn't press. I wasn't the same man who left for deployment all those months ago. That version of me thought love was enough to hold a family together. That loyalty could fix anything. That silence was safer than confrontation. Now I knew better. Love without trust is a weapon. Loyalty without truth is weakness. And silence only protects the guilty. I'd rebuilt my life not from rage, but from clarity. Not by taking revenge, but by making sure justice had a name, a face, and a future. Emma. Sometimes people ask why I never went public with the story. Why I didn't expose everyone involved. Write a book. Tell the world what happened. And I could have. But then I'd be giving them more than they deserve. Attention. Relevance. Wait. Instead, I chose something else. Peace. 6 months passed before Ashley tried to see Emma. It came through a lawyer. Formal. Polite. A request for a supervised visit to reconnect and begin rebuilding trust. Emma was 8 by then. Sharper than most kids. Quieter, too. She still asked tough questions, but had stopped looking for soft answers. Life had taught her not to expect them. I didn't hide the request. I sat her down at the kitchen table, showed her the letter, and waited. She read it once. Folded the paper. Do I have to? No, I said. You never have to. She nodded and didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, she didn't want me back then. Why now? That was the first time I realized how deeply she'd been watching. Not just listening. Watching. Feeling. I hugged her. And that night, I sent the lawyer a one-line response. The child has declined the request at this time. I thought that would be the last of it. But 2 weeks later, Lauren called me from a courthouse in another state. Ashley had been arrested again. Not for anything related to me or Emma. Not even anything national security related. This time, it was insurance fraud, faking claims on a damaged car that didn't exist. Reckless. Sloppy. Small time. She'd unraveled completely. Lauren said the state was filing for probation revocation. Ashley could face up to 3 years in actual prison. I didn't feel satisfaction. Just inevitability. Ashley never knew how to stop before the cliff. That night, Emma found an old photo in a drawer. One of the few I hadn't thrown away. Her, Ashley, and me, on the beach during better years. She stared at it for a while. I used to think she was a superhero, she said. She was your mom, I said. She still is. Emma didn't argue. She just put the photo back and asked if we could go bike riding the next morning. She didn't need closure. She needed presence. So that's what I gave her. People always expect healing to look dramatic. Like a movie scene. Some big emotional speech or tearful hug. It's quieter than that. Healing looks like packing lunches without feeling tension in your chest. It looks like laughing at a joke your kid tells without remembering where you were when everything broke. It's sleeping through the night and waking up without bracing for a new betrayal. And for me, it was teaching other soldiers how to stay grounded when the war came home. My new recruits knew my record, but not my story. That was by design. I wasn't a cautionary tale. I was just someone who understood that sometimes the enemy wears a familiar face, and that it's not weakness to walk away from what you can't fix, it's survival. One of my students once asked me, "What's the hardest part of leaving active duty?" I didn't even think about it. Coming home to people who don't understand what you gave up. He nodded, quiet, then asked what helped. I smiled. Being needed by someone who never asked me to be perfect, just to be there. That answer wasn't about the military. It was about Emma. Lauren eventually moved closer. Said she missed her favorite niece too much to only visit on weekends. I think she knew I still needed backup, even if I pretended otherwise. Emma took to having her around. They had rituals now. Puzzles on Sundays, movie nights, sarcastic jokes that only they understood. One night, I overheard Lauren tell Emma, "Your dad's the toughest softie I know." And Emma said, "Yeah, but don't tell him. He still thinks he's scary." I didn't correct her. Let her believe that. Let her feel safe knowing I could scare away anything. The final message from Ashley came 6 months into her new sentence. It wasn't a letter. It was a signed form relinquishing all parental rights, voluntarily and without contest. No explanation. No apology. Just a quiet end to a story she'd started writing in lies. Emma never saw the form. I didn't hide it. I just didn't think it mattered. She was already writing her own story. And it didn't start with betrayal. The last time Emma brought up her mother, it was in the car on the way to school. "If I have kids," she said, "I want them to know that families are supposed to feel safe, not scary." I looked at her in the rearview mirror. "You'll show them that," I said, "because you already know the difference." She smiled. And that was it. No drama. No breakdown. Just a moment between a father and a daughter who had survived something they never asked for and refused to be defined by it. A year after everything ended, Emma stood on stage at her school's spring recital, eyes scanning the crowd until she found me. She didn't wave. She smiled, short and certain, then went straight into her lines. No hesitation. No fear. That small moment told me more than any therapy report or counselor note ever could. She was okay. Not untouched. Not immune to what had happened, but stronger than it. She had learned, at 8 years old, something many adults never do. You don't have to carry other people's mistakes forever. You just need someone who won't let you carry them alone. After the recital, as we walked to the car, she asked, "Why don't I remember the bad parts as much anymore?" I paused. "Because you're not living in them now." She seemed satisfied with that answer. So was I? Over time, I stopped checking Ashley's name online. For a while, it had become a habit, searching for updates, public records, court mentions. A part of me had wanted to keep tabs on what she'd do next. Out of concern, curiosity, maybe both. But the last time I looked, there was nothing new. No recent filings. No address updates. Just digital silence. And I realized I didn't care anymore. She no longer had power over me, or Emma. And that, more than any sentence, was justice. One afternoon, Lauren found an old USB in one of her desk drawers, the one we'd used during the investigation. She asked what I wanted to do with it. Wipe it, I said. You sure? It's over. We've got what we need. The rest doesn't matter. She nodded, but I could tell she wasn't fully convinced. She always held on to backup plans, just in case. I kept a secure copy, she said, but I won't touch it unless you ask. I didn't respond, but I was grateful, not for the evidence, but for someone in my life who didn't leave when things got complicated. At base, I was asked to speak at a closed-door session for veterans transitioning to civilian life. Most were younger than me, some already carrying their own version of what I'd survived. I kept it honest. Not about Ashley, not directly, but about betrayal. About how sometimes the worst wounds aren't the ones from combat, but from people who know where to cut and still choose to do it. I told them healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means refusing to let the pain define what comes next. They listened. Some took notes. Most just watched. I saw my past in their eyes. But I also saw something else, possibility. A few months later, Emma brought home a drawing. It was simple. A tree, a house, two figures holding hands. When I asked who they were, she said, you and me. No one else. Not missing anyone. Not erasing. Just moving forward. That's when I knew it was time. We planned a trip. Just the two of us. Somewhere new. No memories to trigger. No ghosts to outwalk. Before we left, I wrote a short letter. Not to Ashley. Not to Lauren. To myself. A reminder. You made it through not because you were unbreakable, but because you let go of the weight you didn't deserve to carry. You stayed grounded, not bitter. You chose presence over punishment. That is what strength looks like. That is what fatherhood looks like. You are not what happened to you. You are what you chose to become after. Don't forget that. JG. On the flight, Emma fell asleep against my shoulder. She hadn't asked about the past in months. No mentions of her mother. No confusion. No tension in her little frame. Only rest. Only peace. And as I looked out the window, sky open and quiet, I understood something I hadn't been able to before. Forgiveness isn't always a gift you give others. Sometimes, it's what you give yourself. When you stop letting pain narrate your story. Ashley's chapter had ended. Emma's was just beginning. And mine. Mine had finally turned the page.